Welcome to the second lecture of week 6. In this video recording, I'm going to talk about your design brief, and basically it's about how to present your user research findings. So the design brief is a document that we are asking you to complete in order to present your findings of your user research. So what's the purpose of this design brief? I don't want you to get confused with how design briefs are used in different settings in the commercial world. So it can mean many different things, like an agreement of what we're going to do design about with the stakeholders and with the and also it could be a summary document of the different features. But here we're referring to a document that describes has information about what you did in your user research, what you found, and highlighting some of the interesting and useful findings to pursue a possible solution or possible solutions. It also includes some potential questions and challenges you want to think ahead. So if these are interesting stuff that we want to pursue, what are some of the considerations we need to think about when we go ahead and do that? The important thing about this document is that it should be used as an accessible communication tool. So you must use this document so that people who did not do the user research with you as a team should be able to understand what you did and also what you learned, so they can get a quick overview as a summary of what you found out. Okay, so that they can sort of consider and make decisions with the team about whether this is a good idea to move forward and what direction this should move forward to. In your deliverable, I'm looking at 2 to 3 pages A4 size and excludes an appendix. So I'm going to suggest that you have something in your appendix as well in this document. So it'll be about 2 to 3 pages plus appendix. There are 5 sections that I recommend. I've created a design brief template, and these are the 5 sections: aim, the method, the findings, interesting or useful findings to consider, and possible questions or challenges. I'll go through each one of them to explain to you how to use this design brief template. So in the aim, it's basically a couple of sentences, so it shouldn't be more than that. It's about why did you conduct the user research. So, basically it's about, we conducted user research in order to learn about, okay, so what were you interested in learning and why, and of course this is about restating your project's question. Okay, and the next section, and again this section is actually well, it's not that long, but it's actually very easy to do because it's just basically telling us what you did, right? So this is the section called Method of User Research. So it's a brief description of your user research. So for example, things that you would include here is the total number of participants, how you recruited them, the basic demographic details of your participants, how did you interview them, what are the procedure of the interview. So did you call, and did you set aside a time, and did you tell them how long it's going to be, what did you use for recording, and whatever you think that's relevant to let the reader know what you did. Okay, and it should include a summary of questions. So overall, you might say overall the questions were 2 groups. The first group of questions were directed towards this. The second group of questions were directed against to find out more about this and that. Okay, and then you will provide a full list of the question in the appendix. And a brief description of how you conducted the data analysis. Okay, just describe how. Okay, so for instance, individuals did their the data analysis and describe what individuals did, and then what did the team do as a group data analysis. So it shouldn't be a lot of thinking, but it should be just a lot of recounting what happened and writing it down in a clear and easy to follow manner. Here is the most important part. Okay, so this shouldn't be there. So it is about finding. So what did you learn? What did the team learn at the end about the user research. So after conducting the user research, about the experience, okay, in particular the experience of interest. So about the experience of workers in an office, experience of people in a lockdown, experiences of international students arriving here and studying here in Sydney. Okay, so here is where you want to present the finding section is the summarized experiences. So what are the experiences? What are the positive and negative experiences? Can you name them? Okay, so don't just say, oh, the experience is good or bad, but what was it? Was it loneliness? Was it fear? Was it joy? Was it freedom? So talk about them, okay? And how do these experiences affect the people that you were interviewing? Okay, so not just about feelings. Again, remember I said about experiences more than just about feelings. So go back to lecture 2, have a look at the lecture material. It's also about what did the experience make people think? What did the experience make people reflect? What did the experience make people feel? And also what did the experience make people do? Okay, so if the experience is what did they end up doing? How did they respond? Okay, so a good thing to do if you can, and I would strongly suggest it, is to consider providing quotes of experience from people you interview. So if you think that, find a quote from one of your participants that really capture the essence of that experience. So put a quote and write it down. Okay, and say, for instance, so one of the experience we were talking about, our participants talked about, a lot of our participants talk about, was about the experience of loneliness. Okay, so and then you put a quote. This quote below, it's really really captures this experience of loneliness. Okay, so then you include what people said about loneliness. The findings should include also what factors affected these experiences. So if it's loneliness, what caused that loneliness? If it's about freedom, what was the thing that affected or led to this freedom? Okay. One of the things that you should be asking, and I hope that you ask and be able to report as part of the findings, would be what are the desirable experiences and what are the meaningful experiences. So if you're looking at people working in an office and they tell you about the experiences, you should be asking about, so what are something that you think would be desirable? What would you think and hope would be something that's desirable and something that's meaningful? And same with the other experience. If you're interested in, let's say, an international student studying in Sydney, you will hopefully be asking about, so what is a meaningful experience for you as an international student studying in Sydney? What is a desirable experience for you? Give me, the top desirable or the most desirable experience for you as an international student studying in Sydney. So just like the previous video recording about persona, I'm going to go through some brief steps about how you do that. So for step 1, so individually, you transcribe your experience-related data. So this is basically what I also stated in the affinity diagramming video. Okay, so individually, you listen to your recordings of the interview, but you listen to the sections about the experience, not so much the personal information. Okay, so you listen to the part in which you ask questions about the experience of your interest. And then individually, you transcribe the relevant data to post-it notes. And as I said in the affinity diagramming video, one idea per post-it. And then you start sorting and start creating an affinity diagramming. And so you end up with, individually, findings for the individual students. So this set of findings. Okay, so these slides visually describes an individual student, one student listening to their own recordings of their own interviews, creating the post-it notes with individual ideas and findings on each one, and then sorting them and through affinity diagramming. Now, as I described in the affinity diagramming lecture video, then in an online conference or through using Miro, for example, then the findings of the individual team members will need to be brought together. and you need to discuss, and you need to resort. You need to think about, okay, what are the similarities? How can we combine them together? So you will be looking at how these four relate to each other and how there's commonalities. What are some really interesting themes? You might need to create new headers, new ideas, okay? And which leads to a final team finding here. Okay, so combining individual findings into one team findings. Now, once you've got the team findings, the step 4 is actually about then taking what you've got in your team findings in here and to putting them into your findings section in your design brief document. Okay, so what did you learn? So these are the key ideas of what you learned that you want to then put into your findings section, right? And just want to go back very, very quickly. To remind you that these are the areas that you need to the different sections you need to complete. And I did not create a slide for this final one. And the final one, after you put in your findings into your design brief, remember you would then pull out. So section 4 is when you pull out, okay, from the findings. Then you pull out and highlight certain findings that you think are really useful and really interesting to think about when designing. Okay, so section 4 is when you pull out from the findings some of the, should be more than one, a number of interesting and useful findings to consider when designing. So describe them a little bit more detail about, and tell us about why are these really interesting for design or to consider in the design process in the next step that you're going to do. Okay, and related to this interesting and useful things that you want to pursue, I want you to have a final section where you talk about, well, if these are what we're interested in pursuing, if this is what are interesting to pursue as a design solution, or to explore what design solution would be, then what are some of the things that we need to think about? What are some of the challenges that we need to think about? Okay, so section 3, 4, and 5, well, 3 even less thinking, but 4 and 5 would need you to show as a team some thinking about what to do. Okay, so 4 is about selecting and reducing the amount of findings to things that you think as a team could be pursued as further exploration to look at a design solution. Okay, so I hope you've got a good idea of how to use the design brief. Now, the design brief template has been uploaded to the assignment 2 page on Canvas, and I hope when I see you online next week, you'll have questions for me on what to do. Remember, both the design brief and the persona are not due until week 8, so don't stress too much. More important is actually to make sure that you get your user research and analysis of your user research completed to the best of your ability. Okay, I'll see you next week.